It is my great honor and pleasure to host this NACT session focusing on rare earth element, supply chains, and national energy transition strategies across Southeast Asia. Today, we are gathered to share in-depth research insights, exchange professional perspectives, and explore regional cooperation opportunities in the fields of strategic resources and energy development. We'll start our first presentation of this session. Our first speaker is Mr. Fahad Nizam, researcher from the Institute of Strategic and International Studies, ISIS, representing NACT Malaysia. He will deliver a presentation titled Green Malaysia REE Supply Chain. And the rare earth elements are core strategic resources supporting high-tech and green industrial development. Without further ado, let's give a welcome to Mr. Nizam.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. As you all know, my name is Fahad, and I am a researcher from the Institute of Strategic and International Studies, Malaysia, particularly from the Economics and Trade and Regional Integration. So this research actually comes off the back of one that we conducted last year, where it's titled From Mine to Magnet, so very similar to Hanif's From Mine to Market, where we kind of navigated and conducted a thorough stakeholder interview, international and domestic, on Malaysia's REE industry. And I've kind of retrofitted that research to be more focused on the sustainable part, because during that research we did governance, we did economics, and we did sustainability. So those are the three pillars. So today we'll just be focusing on the greening area, and particularly how this can coincide towards an ASEAN and China collaboration. So let's begin. So by the end of this presentation, hopefully you will understand, oh, sorry, I'm pressing the wrong button. There you go. By the end of this presentation, you will hopefully understand the background of the situation, the landscape of REEs in the world and in Malaysia. Malaysia's safeguarding policies, I'll go through that real quick because it might be quite foreign to everyone and not relevant. And the challenges that we face and maybe ASEAN nations face as well, collectively, and the recommendations moving forward. So background. So first, the three discussions earlier did highlight slightly on the importance of REEs and how important it is to greening our global supply chain and greening our technologies in general. And it's pivotal. If you can see on the right here, it's a graph that shows the annual capacity in gigawatts for three technologies. You have solar PV, wind, and electric cars. And from 2019 to 2023, that trend has a significant uprise. And this is normally due to, and we suggest that this is due to rapid innovations in clean energy, and EVs are the key drivers of this capacity growth. And one of the main things about this growth is that this transition towards clean energy demands globally requires intensive supply of REEs. And the International Energy Agency alluded to about 41% of global REE reserves is required to achieve the goals set during the Paris Agreement. So that's nearly half of global reserves. And we know that supply chains are bottlenecked, right? Let's focus to the chart on the right. You have the global supply chain concentration of REEs by processes in the year 2020. You have 4 rows: magnet manufacturing, metal refining, separation, and mining. So that goes through the entire supply chain of REEs. And you can see that the dark blue shade is China. And we know that the global concentration of RE supply chains in China, it is the majority, and it controls majority of the global supply chain. For Malaysia's context, we hold 7% in the global supply chain for separation only. And you can see it's scattered in other countries as well. So you have US and Myanmar and mining, and you have Japan and magnet manufacturing, and metal refining in Vietnam. But in general, majority of the global mid and downstream is dominated by China, with over 89% in separation, 90% in metal refining, and 92% in magnet manufacturing. And this causes other countries around the world to look for more options, the diversification of supply chains, which then entails for them to look towards RE-rich nations, so non-Chinese supplies. And this has nothing to do with political, this is just a risk of supply chains in general, right? And ASEAN nations has an abundance of IAC REEs, which is just an abbreviation for ionized absorption clays, one of the few types of REEs available in the world, with rough total estimates going as high as 1 billion tons in ASEAN in total, right? And Malaysia is one of the several countries with commercially viable IECs, with about 16.1 million tons estimated. And this graph here shows you the states, the inferred RE state in Malaysia by state, which has the REEs in percentage. And I've highlighted two in particular, Terengganu and Kelantan. I'm not sure if you've heard of these states, but these are northern states in Malaysia. And you can see that they control more than half of Malaysia's entire REE deposits. Perak is as well considered a northern state, but it's closer to the middle. Now the issue is that the majority of these RE deposits lay under protected rainforests, right? Gazetted by our Ministry of Natural Resources. And this is not an issue which is only faced by Malaysia. It's an issue that's faced by the global, by the world, other nations as well, and particularly in ASEAN, where nations are REE rich. And on the right here, you can see a map which shows the inferred REE deposits in the country, in Malaysia. The shades of green shows the gazetted protected rainforests, and the dots of pink are the inferred deposits of REEs. And the overlay is quite high. Now recall that I said that Malaysia's deposits go up to 16.1 million tons, and the reality is that only 18.8% of those estimated reserves are mineable outside of these protected forest reserves. Now that said, right, rising global demand exerts pressure to tap into these environmentally sensitive reserves. And it's an incentive for Malaysia and all the other countries, just like ASEAN, to utilize as much as they can, as REEs have become quite an important commodity in the world. However, it potentially risks ecosystems if not regulated and controlled. So that's the context of it all. And to summarize, the world requires REEs for transition towards green energy. However, global supply of REEs are captured by a single supplier. Stakeholders around the world and nations are looking towards diversifying these supply chains, and they are looking at REE-rich nations like those in ASEAN. But at the same time, a good majority of these REEs are under sensitive and protected rainforests. So what are some of Malaysia's safeguarding policies to prevent this hypocritical transition that we've mentioned throughout this discussion earlier, where inputs are considered non-sustainable, but the outputs are sustainable? So here is kind of a quick summary of Malaysia's relevant safeguarding policies, and it's divided by two. You have the legislative and environmental safeguards, which covers across and many industries, and you have REE-specific policies on the right. So I'll go through this quickly. So first we have the Mineral Development Act in 1994, which requires all mining activities to obtain an operational mining scheme called the OMS. Followed this by the Environmental Quality Act in 1974, which mandates environmental impact assessments, including ISL, in-situ leaching, and radioactive discharge risks. We have the Atomic Energy Licensing Act, which regulates thorium waste for RE refining, or anything that requires, which deals with radioactiveness. And we have the National Forestry Act in 1984, which prohibits mining in permanent forest reserves, subject to state degazettement. I'll get to that part a bit later. And lastly, we have ecological fiscal transfers, where the federal government financially incentivizes states to conserve their forests, which are these PFRs. And here's some of the RE-specific policies. Recently, we have the non-radioactive REE SOPs in 2023, which provides environmental safeguards for exploration, ISL mining, and rehabilitation. Unfortunately, during our investigation, these SOPs are only looking at upstream, so only mining, and they're absent for midstream and downstream and have no kind of plan to go down to the midstream and downstream. We also have an export moratorium. So it prohibits exports of unprocessed REEs to promote domestic value addition whilst conserving our forests. And lastly, we have the permanent disposable facilities. This is particularly towards the midstream where processes are required for long-term management of radioactive residues, as thorium is a radioactive element that comes with REEs once they are processed. So what are the similarities and what are the differences between this policies and legislations and others that are placed in ASEAN, right? So let's look at the chart on the right, which shows the number of policies and legislations by ASEAN nations, particularly in the mining industry. And you have Indonesia with the most amount, and this is separate actually by two things, by two types, relevant legislation and policy statements. So Indonesia leads ASEAN with about roughly 21 total documents, followed by Vietnam, Malaysia, Myanmar, Philippines, and so on, right? And you can see that based on looking at this, you see that ASEAN's mining safeguarding policies have staggered maturity depending on each nation. And sustainability is increasingly embedded in national mining. However, with that said, the quantity of legislation does not necessarily equate to regulatory effectiveness. So this goes into capacity, the ability to enforce these legislations. These are what are some of the limitations that all nations face, Malaysia in particular, and I'm sure in ASEAN, other ASEAN nations as well. Which brings me to the next slide, the challenges that Malaysia face. And I was alluding to it earlier, which is that the implementation of the policies is our main challenge. During our stakeholder interviews, we figured out kind of four main things in terms of sustainability. And the first is environmental oversight, which is limited by manpower constraints, weakening enforcement, and deharmonized environmental impact assessment protocols, which risks gaps and duplications. So this first part, let me give you some context to it. The manpower constraints is weak because although the protected rainforests is done and gazetted by the federal government, the enforcement is done by the state. And where states have low funds and low manpower, when illegal mining is inevitably done, it isn't really up to the federal government to enforce this. Although it is a federal crime, the policement of these laws are done by the states. And for the deharmonized EIAs, this refers to the earlier other document called the OMS, where both have similar requirements, but kind of go to different federal governments as well. So there's one, the EIA actually goes to the the Ministry of Natural Resources, and the OMS goes to the Jabatan Mineral and Geoscience Department, which is both federal governments, but both different, but both require similar things. So it kind of confuses stakeholders. And next is market and ESG risks, which are increased due to absent mine to final good traceability. So this is kind of a hard ask, and it's quite common in any supply chain to have the traceability from raw goods materials all the way to the final product. But particularly the concern for REEs is the sovereignty issue of the usability of REEs, where REEs can be used towards defense technologies. So particularly in here, one of the challenges is the traceability. Not only that, we have land use conflict. So this is an issue that's particularly faced by Malaysia, where state controls how the minerals are. States controls land. So that's but federal gazettes forests. So there's a back and forth between federal, where this has become a sovereignty issue of minerals and the importance of these commodities to be mobilized as a national plan and a goal. But it's inevitably up to the states to run this, because it is a state issue. And lastly, we have environmental risks, which is increased as financial constraints pressures state governments in Malaysia to de-gazette protected rainforests for commercial use. So you have this back and forth issue with land conflict, environmental risks happening in Malaysia as well. And this is not something that's only faced by Malaysia, but can actually also be extrapolated to ASEAN countries as well. You have uneven levels of regulation across ASEAN, which is alluded to in the earlier graph, as each nation has different national regulations, licensing systems, and ESG requirements. This creates an inconsistent investment environment for international investors interested to join this REE industry in the region. And second, we have limited implementation and institutional capacities. As nations lack the financial capacity and technical experts to sustain enforcement and implementation, thus reducing regulatory effectiveness. And lastly, we have limited regional coordination and supply chain integration. REE is the hot topic of last year and this year, and probably it will be in the next 5 years. And as each nation aims to create a vertically integrated supply chain to join this global sought after industry, the lack of coordination inevitably hinders development of a competitive regional REE industry. So what are some of the recommendations that have been brought forward? Particularly for Malaysia, one of it is to strengthen the environmental governance and standards. And to do this, we have to kind of streamline our documentation processes, our EIAs in particular, which is messy and hard to navigate. We suggested that we should establish a unified center of excellence. Canada has one called the Canadian Critical Minerals Center of Excellence. Perhaps we could do similar to an ASEAN. And Malaysia should also look to have an independent REE advisory board. Now, this in particular was recommended because although Malaysia has figured out the importance of REEs and its research, the research towards RE development and the science behind the chemicals used in it has been staggered and not coordinated across Malaysian universities. So through an RE advisory board, this can be unified under a single umbrella for a single mission. While moving on, we have enhancing traceability and ESG compliance. So we've suggested to create a digital chain of custody platform. We should also look to leverage ASEAN's mineral cooperation framework, which the timeline is about 2026 to 2030. That's out already. And lastly, we should encourage third-party certifications. This was brought forward by Hanif earlier. IRMA, which is the Initiative for Responsible Mining Assurance. And lastly, we have institutionalizing social sustainability. We suggest that the RE industry should look to have a national guideline for free, prior, and informed consent, FPIC. And this is mainly for the indigenous communities and the participation of local towns, which most of these rural areas are affected by these mines. And we mandate that this CSR partnerships where portions of mining and royalties or profits are to be shared with local communities as well. So how do we also get to the region? How do we increase regional integration, and where does this ASEAN-China collaboration comes to play? So the main issue that we've been highlighting and been reiterating throughout this presentation was that we all face capacity issues. So the first area that opens up opportunity of collaboration is capacity building for regulatory institutions to strengthen technical expertise in processing, environmental management, and operational standards. Secondly, we should look to develop common environmental standards and best practices across ASEAN. We've already attempted that with the ASEAN Comprehensive Mineral Act, and we should look to continue leveraging that as well. Not only that, we should look to collaborate on responsible mining practices through joint ventures and on mine rehabilitation, tailings management, radioactive residue handling, and ESG practices to support more sustainable RE developments. I believe that if we look at this into a regional security issue rather than a national security issue, collaborations can be fastened. So here are some of the key takeaways of the presentation. First, the diversification of RE supply chains towards ASEAN nations is a strong opportunity for the region. However, a direct conflict persists between economic development and ecosystem conservation. Malaysia has a comprehensive framework of RE-relevant policies, but like many other ASEAN members as well, the primary challenge lies in effectiveness in implementation and enforcement. As Malaysia and ASEAN members must continue to strengthen environmental governance, enhance supply chain traceability, and build regional regulatory capacity through ASEAN-China collaboration. And achieving a sustainable regional REE industry requires balancing economic gains with robust environmental safeguards. Yes, so I believe that's the end of my presentation. Thank you very much. If you have any questions, please feel free to open up. And if you have any questions on our prior research, just reach out and I will give you the documents that you need. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your very detailed sharing, Fahad. Your comprehensive interpretation of Malaysia green REE supply chain has brought us clear and valuable references for understanding the policy system and problems, and also suggestions for China and ASEAN cooperation. Next, we'll move on to the second presentation of this session. It is my honor to introduce Dr. Quinn Mong Luin, Senior Advisor from the Myanmar Institute of Strategic and International Studies. And his presentation topic is Strategic Importance of REE.
A lot of previous presenters mentioned about the supply chain and green development. Please have a look to my story. Chris Miller's chip war is, now we can see it all. His wisdom is quite correct, and people cannot see with their eyes, but the feeling of chip war is having a big impact in ASEAN. The shortage is visible in United States, and you can see the car models now was hit by the microchip shortage. So they have already act like Malaysia. Malaysia has a lot of number of acts, and Chips for America Act on 2022 also on the subjects of the essential minerals. And here comes the REE. Like my friend from Malaysia said, REE is a hot topic within this 2 years period of time because of that role played by the REE in various industrial roles. So these are the things that you all know it. But now my presentation is not based on direct evidence. So don't ask me about the information from Myanmar, because I tried to collect the information. China imports from Myanmar hit record high in 2023. You can see the China import. So this is also from the outside report, and it is very visible in reality. For my personal knowledge, this is my first engagement with the REE when I checked the Global China Daily, where the President Xi visited the production sites, and it relates to Myanmar also. So this is how Myanmar's role is documented very early in 2019. So from Myanmar mining sector, you check and verify it, but it comes from the China customs data set. So you can see the rare earth role is. You can see the big blue ring is related to Myanmar. Myanmar is the world's third largest source of mined rare earth with rich deposits of dysprosium and terbium. These are the two important rare earth sought after heavy rare earth elements that are otherwise in short supply. China is heavily dependent on Myanmar for raw materials. Today, the two countries dominate the rare earth supply chain and control nearly 90% of the heavy rare earth output. So, if you want to verify it, not ask me, ask my friends from China. So, what we are having, fueling the future, poisoning the present, Myanmar's rare earth boom. So, what we are doing is poisoning also our future and the present. And this is the site, the real site in Kachin, China and Myanmar border site. So it is, the hearsay is that it is the size of the Singapore, my friend. So the area is. So you can see the dots. It's a close look. Because they use the technology of leaching by using the nitrate used as a fertilizer. So they just, this is a collection ponds from the leachates. What happened? Mountains across Kachin bear the scars of rare earth mining. This come from Global Witness. And how they make it. The supply chain of heavy rare earth minerals from illicit mining in Myanmar. So we are producing without our knowledge, and we are selling without earning. So these are the things happening. But the main thing is our environment. So these are the ponds from the one article from 25 November. US-India cooperation RE refining could give Kachin rebels controlling mines a strategic alternative to China. So this is a combination of geopolitics and geoeconomics. So it is so complex. This is the record of the ASEAN interest, the strategic pivot to become a high-value manufacturing hub for critical minerals. Financial constraint and external dependencies, however, may make this challenging. So I see that Malaysia, Indonesia has a lot of impressive critical minerals, especially nickel. We also have nickel mine supported by the Chinese, and also copper mine and many other interesting areas. So more interesting is the rare earth elements are essential for everyday technology with the new technologies as synthesized materials are coming also. So don't be too much worrying about the supply chain. And also they are polishing materials. It's in the National Museum in Beijing, China, March 24, 2026. And the most interesting news come from Canada and China consider critical minerals joint stockpiling in hunt for China alternatives. So there are stockpiling of the rare earth and critical minerals also starting. Another alternative, Canada announces more federal investment for projects to advance critical minerals mining. This is from Canada. And Sweden, another approach from the government, 25-year concession to heavy rare earth deposits. So these are some of the takeaway messages from the other countries. The third alternative, recycling offers fastest path to India's critical minerals security. E-waste, battery waste, mine, tailings can reduce imported dependence while domestic mining capacity develop. Also, my friend from Malaysia mentioned about how to reuse the thing. And US Kali, that's rare earth refiner demonstrates high purity rare earth production possible from primary and waste streams. So these are all streams from US and Japan. But Japan's plan to recycle rare earth minerals from air-conditioned units is unfeasible and reveals its weak points, the Chinese analysis. This is the Chinese point of view. Like Malaysia, this is our map of our critical minerals. But unfortunately, we have no document on the rare earth elements. These are all the things. And a lot of critical minerals can be produced in my country. So I requested to give comments from some of the Myanmar high-level people, and they said, don't take the northernmost part of Myanmar. Please leave this part for REE, but take wherever you like in this area in the southern part. So these are for my ASEAN friend. Come and take this thing if you can come. So this is my takeaway message. We can work together for a just and sustainable green industrialization, because now the previous presenters also are suggesting about how to work together. Especially now we are working with Laos, because mentioned about the EV also is electricity essential for that. And in my country, electricity is not supplied as a luxury. So EV cars have to look into the map whether the station is working or not, whether the station has electric supply or not. So there are a lot of important systems to be looked into it. So these are some of my takeaway presentation. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Lewin. Your systematic elaboration on the strategic importance of rare earth elements has broadened our vision and helped us establish a more broad and also very good example, or maybe bad example, in your country for our understanding of the consequences of the rare earth leaching problem. And following the two excellent presentation on rare earth elements, we'll turn our focus to regional energy transition and policy innovation. Now let's welcome our third speaker, Mr. John Francis C. Ceremines. You have mine, Assistant Chief and Tech Diplomacy Study Section, Center for International Relations and Strategic Studies, Foreign Service Institute, Department of Foreign Affairs, from NACT, Philippines. And he will bring us a presentation entitled The Philippines Energy Transition Policy Reform, Regional Cooperation, and Road Ahead. Please.
To NACT organizers, my co-participants, distinguished delegates, good afternoon. As a caveat, this presentation is still a work in progress. The analysis, findings, and recommendations presented here are just preliminary and may be further refined. Before I begin, I would like to share the structure of my presentation. First, as a context, I use the 2026 global energy crisis and ASEAN vulnerability. Then I will discuss the divergent national resilience. What can we learn from China? As well as followed by the discussion on the Philippine energy sector and what are the key challenges to the Philippines clean energy transition. And it will be concluded by preliminary recommendations. The core argument of my discussion is that the 2026 energy crisis serves as a compelling moment for the Philippines to undertake a fundamental reorientation of its energy strategy by reforming energy policy that can be reinforced by industrial development, which then may create enabling conditions for clean energy transition or development. So, to begin with, the Strait of Hormuz occupies a unique position within the global energy system. While it serves as a vital waterway for Asia-Pacific economies, energy sources, its weaponization underscores how strategic choke points can be leveraged as instruments of geopolitical retaliation and geoeconomic influence. The closure of the strait has triggered a sharp increase in the global oil and LNG prices, which for the Asian Development Bank, benchmark crude oil prices rose from approximately $70 US dollars barrel in February to $120 US dollars in March 2026, representing an increase of more than 71%. During the same period, liquefied natural gas prices surged from $11 MMBTU to $23 per MMBTU, equivalent to an increase of approximately 109%. These prices quickly reverberated across ASEAN economies. This prompted the increase in fuel costs, rising production expenses, and broader inflationary pressures, which are transmitted into domestic economies. In the Philippines, the crisis translated into fuel price increases, with diesel prices reaching 164 pesos per liter and gasoline prices climbing to 120 pesos per liter in April 2026. This prompted a rise in the inflation rate of 4.4%, which is above our government's target. The World Bank reported a deceleration in some of ASEAN economies' growth due to their continued reliance on energy imports from the Middle East. Among the AMS, the Philippines emerged as one of the most vulnerable economies, recording 3.7% GDP growth in April 2026, down from 4.4% last year. In that figure, we can see from ASEAN Center for Energy, those are the red ones are the indication or the figures of how much the the ASEAN economies import from the Middle East. Now, to moderate the adverse impact of the energy crisis, going back, AMS has implemented various measures ranging from restraining oil demand to conserving energy and subsidizing fuel. In particular, the Philippines implemented a national energy emergency and austerity measure to cushion the impact on domestic energy supply. Yes, these measures help buffer the immediate socio-economic impact of the energy crisis. However, the prolonged conflict and uncertainty on the stability of energy supply may further compound the country's fiscal deficits as we are still solving our liabilities incurred during the pandemic. Overall, it underscores the urgency for our countries, in particular the Philippines, to accelerate clean energy transitions. Achieving this may necessitate fast adoption of RE in power generation and electric vehicles, harnessing of critical minerals for batteries and storage systems, and transformation of the manufacturing sector. So while some ASEAN member state faces struggles in GDP growth, there is the uneven impact of the energy crisis demonstrate that vulnerabilities are shaped by deliberate policy choices, infrastructure investment, and energy diversification. These strategies that have produced varying levels of resilience among Asian economies. This contrast is particularly evident when we compare our experience with China. Despite being among the world's largest importer of energy, China demonstrated a greater capacity to absorb supply disruption and stabilize domestic energy markets by conducting or pursuing diversification strategies of market energy sources, expanding strategic petroleum reserves, and developing comprehensive contingency mechanisms to respond to disruptions in international energy markets. More significantly, China has invested heavily in renewable energy infrastructure, transport electrification, and energy storage technologies, emerging as the world's largest producer of solar panels, batteries, and electric vehicles, while also possessing one of the largest installed renewable energy capacities globally. This helps China to have a predominant position in EVs, accounting for 70% and 40% in global manufacturing and trade. That is according to International Energy Agency. Overall, this only means that economies that invested in strategic reserves, diversified energy sources, electrified transportation systems, expanded RE infrastructures, and deployed energy storage technologies were able to cushion the external shocks and maintain economic stability. China's experience and policies suggest that energy transition itself may serve as a critical instrument of energy security. Moving on to the Philippines energy sector, the Philippines has experienced sustained economic growth. However, the country's energy sector remains heavily reliant on fossil fuels. According to our Department of Energy 2024 data, oil and petroleum gas hold the largest shares of the country's final energy consumption, accounting for 54.1%, followed by electricity with 21.4%. In the country's total primary energy supplies, coal-fired power plants and renewable energy sources contribute significantly. Meanwhile, the transport sector exhibits an even greater degree of fossil fuel dependence. Petroleum products account for more than 65.5% transportation energy demand. This dynamic, along with the shortcomings of the country's unregulated petroleum markets, makes the industry highly susceptible to fluctuations in global oil prices. Consequently, disruptions in international energy markets immediately translate into higher transportation costs, inflationary pressures, and again, increased production expense throughout the country. Moving on. From this, I determine as initial findings, there are key challenges. For one, interrelated challenges. For one, entrenched import dependence on fossil fuels and discovery of new natural gas exposed the country to energy disruptions and may diminishes investor interest to RE. Secondly, the country needs there is a further need to intensify infrastructure for energy system because the Philippines accounts for all the renewable energy power generation is relatively small compared with coal-fired power plants, which accounts for 62.5%. There is a growing momentum in this alternative. However, the Philippines is accelerating the establishment of solar farms to harness solar power for energy generation. Nonetheless, the oligopolistic system in electricity, which is dominated by prominent families in the transmission and the existence of unreliable and inadequate grid infrastructure across the entire Philippine archipelago cause high electricity prices and recurrent power outage. Next, the limited domestic manufacturing sector. The country currently manufactures a limited share of technology required for RE deployment. Solar powers, wind turbine components, battery cells, and grid storage system are predominantly imported primarily from China. This limited domestic manufacturing base constrains the broader economic benefits of the energy transition in two respects. On one hand, the limited domestic manufacturing limits the extent to which declining global technology costs translate into employment generation, technology transfer, and supply chain resilience within the Philippine economy. Benefits that have accrued more substantially to countries such as China, Japan, and Vietnam, as well as Malaysia, through their domestic manufacturing sectors. On the other hand, the country's mineral resource endowment has not yet been fully converted into domestic manufacturing capacity. The Philippines is the world's second largest supplier of nickel ore, next to only to Indonesia, a critical input for lithium-ion batteries, yet the majority of this ore is exported unprocessed rather than refined domestically into higher value battery components and other technologies. This relegates the country's manufacturing sector of mineral products at the low value end of the global value chain. Despite these challenges, the Philippines has taken significant strides to accelerate clean energy transition. It enacted and issued various policies and legal foundations to foster adoption, promote investment, and industrial development. Chief among these is the amendments to Renewable Energy Act, which now allows 100 foreign ownership in solar, wind, and tidal projects for renewable energy, as well as the Create More Act, which allows the alternative incentives for those from those under the RE Act, such as income tax holiday, duty-free imports, and VAT exemptions, among others. So my preliminary recommendation to address the to address the challenges that I have mentioned, I intend to recommend the following. Firstly, that the Philippines must accelerate the modernization of its transmission infrastructure by integrating both centralized and decentralized power grid architecture to ensure a flexible system and more accessible energy supplies across the archipelago, as well as expand the implementation of inter-island submarine electricity network system, support for battery energy storage system, and offshore wind development, as well as establish strategic energy reserves. At the same time, the Philippines must capitalize on its strategic mineral resources to support a broader industrial transformation, developing downstream processing and manufacturing capabilities for batteries, energy storage system, solar panels, and related technologies would allow the country to capture greater economic value, reduce external supply chain dependence, and strengthen its position with emerging clean energy industry. I also recommend the re-evaluation of the oil oil deregulation law, which I now intends to bring up to reinstate into some degree the government involvement in petroleum price stability. In the Electric Power Industry Reform Act, which outlines our power industry, there should be energy data generation mapping and transparency to prevent monopolistic and controlled price manipulation. Next. So the energy transition should come simultaneously with a proactive implementation of diplomatic strategy. The Philippines should sustain engagement in ASEAN Power Grid and BIMP-YAGA, as well as the Philippines should also foster ASEAN-China relationship in energy and minerals cooperation through sustainable development. Likewise, the Philippines should be involved proactively in the implementation of objectives under the Minerals Cooperation Action Plan. And that concludes my presentation.
Thank you so much for your excellent sharing, Mr. Sarah Mines. Your detailed analysis of Philippines' energy crisis, policy reforms, and efforts to enhance energy security and the future developmental path for Philippines' energy transition. And also you mentioned energy transition and its relationship with diplomacy to seek the synergy has given us very deep thinking. And our group have saved plenty of time actually with quite a rigorous structure and a concise delivery. The sharing offer us much food for thought, and left us ample time, for the follow-up discussion and the Q&A section. In this section, we'll further discuss these hot topics, including sustainable development of Southeast Asian REE supply chain, cross-border regional resource and energy cooperation, and the policy coordination mechanisms, and also ASEAN-China cooperation. So we'll welcome our audience members to raise questions and interact with our speaker actively. So let's start our panel discussion, please.
This very good presentation. Let me introduce. My name is Ponchai from Chiang Mai University. Most of my research is about investment and environmental protection as well. and also work with on energy. My questions to Malaysia first is, you mentioned that they have the issue of state, federal impose the law or pass the law, and then you cannot enforce into the state because states challenge the case, right? Because of the lands belong to the state. So once you want to do the minings, then you cannot do it because even they pass the law at the federal, right? This is the question. Another question to Malaysia is that because you have so very important mineral sector, do you have any issue with cross-border when you do the mining? I guess the border which normally with the Thai, so I guess that you don't have, but I'm not sure that you have with the other countries or not. Let's go back to Myanmar. Just to share with you, it's very important because one of the research from that I work for Vietnam, that the problem in Thailand, we have mining industry in Myanmar, which you mentioned that no information, illegal mining, even export, you don't know the information. But the problem is not only in Myanmar, but because it's the cross-border to Thailand in Kok River in Chiang Rai province in Thailand. We suspect that investment are from China in ungoverned control areas. So that the very challenging thing is because the mining is not only purely at national levels at all, but if you're concerned about China, Myanmar, Laos, and Thailand at the triangle that levels, so that's the issue that we have to concern. So just to share with you that it's not purely about Myanmar, it's about Thai, Laos as well, all connected in that triangle. Thai governments trying to communicate a lot, but because of at that Myanmar area, it's not easy to talk, and also investment is not purely from Myanmar. So that's the issue that I think we have to cooperate on that point. But my last question, because it's about energy power. One of the thesis of mine is about competition in electricity company in Thailand, and we face the same problem with monopoly. Can you please elaborate a little bit about monopoly's power in electricity? Because monopoly power is important not to change toward the new generation of RE as well. So that would be, yep. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I have two questions to Francis about the Philippines' energy transitions. Philippines and Indonesia, I think, have some similarities in terms of the dominant use of coal in power plants, right? But you didn't mention further about what is about the Philippine roadmap to coal phasing out, and is Philippines has a seriously have a Philippine serious strategy to the coal phasing out, and if there is the roadmap to the coal phasing out, do you think there are some constraints regarding to the coal phasing out? Because in Indonesia case we facing a problem more political constraint rather than technical constraints. The first one. The second one is I'm really interested about the BIMP Yaga because it's very interesting. It's about the ASEAN power grid system. When Indonesia developed the new capital of Nusantara, one of the idea is about the smart and green city. But the Indonesian government tried to provide their own energy through the hydropower plant in the Kalimantan or Borneo. It's Indonesia more prefer to say the Kalimantan rather than Borneo. I mean in Kalimantan Islands. But I think this is the interesting point when we believe that rather than provide by ourselves, it can optimize this ASEAN power grid connection between Indonesia, Brunei Darussalam, Malaysia, and Philippines. I just wanted to ask, what your opinion about to what extent actually this BIMP IAGA can contribute for this, and do you think there are some constraints? For instance, because in Indonesia there is a regulation, the only seller for the electricity is the state-owned company. This is the problem in Indonesia. No one can sell beyond the state-owned company. Or do you think there are other constraints to optimize this one? Yeah.
Yeah, I have a quick question actually for Myanmar, doctor. So I feel sad that I saw the similar photos that actually I saw like about 15 years ago, but that happened in Jiangxi of China. Jiangxi province of China. So similar things at that time because that time there are lots of private companies doing this mining, the heavy rare earths and use the leaching technology. But after 15 years now, it's much better now. I cannot say completely, completely recover, but much better now. So I wonder if Myanmar has this kind of exchange with, in terms of the governance, exchange with China's local government, and also wonder, are those, mining companies in Myanmar, are they? I also agree with the professor that most of them must be from China, but are they private companies or state-owned companies? I personally, I think if it's a state-owned company, it's quite easy. Just deal with the Chinese government. But if it's the private sector, maybe need to ask the help from Chinese, maybe local government to learn from them how they deal with this in the past. Yeah.
Okay, I'm Thakorn from Chiang Mai University. My research is about for the clean technology. So I have a question for the Malaysian delegation that much of the discussion focus on EV and clean energy. However, AI infrastructure and data center are becoming another major source of demand for the critical mineral. So is Malaysia incorporating AI infrastructure and data center growth into its long-term REE and clean supply chain strategy? Thank you.
Okay, then we'll ask speakers to respond to those questions. First, please, Fahad.
Okay, thank you so much for your very difficult questions. So first, Mr. Ponchai, could I get a clarification on your first question? Was it just a clarification question on the situation, like how it works, the dynamics of
is there any court case, like constitutional court, that because you have the conflict between the federal laws and the state law, and that's the issue or not? I mean, can you elaborate?
So there is. So the thing is the federal and state issue mainly comes when we look at investors, and it becomes a sensitive topic as well, particularly because it's how the Malaysian government has handled previous national strategies on particular commodities. So, like for example, petrol, right? How it has become a centralized institution like Petronas. And some states are unhappy of how the allocation of funds after Petronas was successful were allocated towards each state. For example, like the states that were REE heavy in deposits, like Terengganu, those were also states which were heavy in petroleum deposits as well. However, those states are still in the low priority in terms of federal government funds allocated to each of these states because the population isn't there, the main cities aren't there, and the main developments are not there. However, the natural resources are there. So in this sense, the issues is that although that the federal government wants to mobilize it as a national strategy to uphold or to increase Malaysia's industry in REEs, the state are more inclined to actually go towards private investors and private entities because of what happened previously. So this is an issue of sovereignty, but it's also an issue of royalties as well. So states are allowed to place royalties on minerals and mines. So, and it ranges from 10% all the way up to 50% on royalties. So this can also scare away investors. And the federal government has no say on how much the royalties are placed. So, so that's why it becomes back and forth. And not only that, the degazettement of forests it's a state. The federal implements the gazettement of the forest, but states are able to appeal and try to de-gazette these protected forests as well. And on that note as well, we can jump into your next question, which is cross-border issues, right? And the main issues with cross-borders, it's not publicly out there. The number one border of concern is probably the Thai and Malaysian border up north, where the resources are concentrated towards northern states in Malaysia. But it's also because that it's a lot harder to track when most of the protected rainforests are between these borders. In situ leaching is the main area of collecting these raw materials of REEs. And if you've never seen it, you've seen some by my colleague from Myanmar. Those are the big scales. You can actually do a lot of it in a very small scale. And when you have canopies of forests over top, drones can't even see them. That is, if you have funds to allocate drones for looking for them, right? So manpower is down, technological is down, finances is down. So the main issue of I could think of for cross-border is the illegal mines which can be smuggled through these ones. And on that note, traceability is another issue where I alluded in my presentation. One of the peculiar things that occurred was China actually let the Malaysian government know that their exports, the imports of raw materials sent over from Malaysia was X amount, but that same amount did not match with the Malaysian exported to China. So there is some illegal minings and smuggling across borders in that sense as well, which brings up to the traceability from start. And the issue is actually mainly because processed and non-processed REEs is under the same MESCO trade code and has yet to be separated. It should be separated because the valuation of separated and raw materials differs quite a lot. Moving on to the next question. So that's yours. Is Malaysia incorporating any AI and REEs in its strategies? Unfortunately, based on my knowledge on both industries, it's quite separate. They are kind of working in silos. The AI's role in REEs is the stronger the AI industry is in Malaysia, the stronger downstream it is in terms of REE. So that's the main overlap, and that goes with EVs as well, and manufacturing of magnets. Interestingly enough, there was supposed to be a magnet manufacturer in Malaysia about 2019. But because of political instability, they've actually moved and migrated to Vietnam, right? So unfortunately, the AI and REE strategies are separate, but they do have overlaps and kind of complementary effects to one another. I believe I've answered all the questions on my end. Thank you.
So your question is about
the structure of the monopoly in electricity. Can you please explain? Because in Thailand, we like Indonesia, we have only one company control everything.
Yeah.
Even we try to liberalize it, it's take 25 years now. It's still the same.
Yeah.
What happened in Philippines? Can you please elaborate?
Okay, just an overview. Before 2001, the Philippines has a control in our electricity production, and because of the costly maintenance of grid infrastructure, the overall production of electricity is very costly. It strains our fiscal stability. That's why the Philippine government enacted the EPIRA, or the Electric Power Industry, where the wisdom behind it is to privatize the transmission, generation, and maintenance of grid infrastructure. However, the thing is, we have a predominant families, wealthy families who invested in utility sector, real estate, and doing so, they now currently handles the transmission and all production of electricity, and the lack of data when outage occurs there is a lack of data transparency on when the electricity production will be cut, on there will be outages, so they can manipulate prices on the electricity production. Now the ones who suffers are the household, the normal Filipino citizen, and hence there is a now a clamor in our society to bring about transparency in power generation, in power maintenance, and grid infrastructure. On the coal powered power plants, actually in 2020, the Philippine government issued a moratorium to halt the establishment of new coal power plants to again reduce our reliance on coal. However, the problem is there is a sluggish, should I say, sluggish adoption of alternative renewable energy sources that will buttress or replace our needs for electricity emanating from coal. And with regard to BIMP-AGA, the Philippines has a political will to further intensify our cooperation in our region. However, again, the grid infrastructure is still lacking. That is why I think it remains to be a challenge in further accelerating our actions in connecting our lands and power lines to again emulate what has been happening with Laos, Thailand, Singapore, and Malaysia. But again, there is a political will. It is the Philippines' interest to continue deepening our power integration. Thank you so much.
Dr. Lui, please respond.
So ownership is in the hands of families, okay? Oh, it is different. In Myanmar, the ownership is in the hands of guns. So this is different. Guns.
Conflict.
You know? So this is the issue. And to respond first to the lady, because which private company is owning? So to tell the truth, the mining businesses, the government control activity like Malaysia, Indonesia, but that area that I show is controlled by different people. So which company who are controlling is having no evidence at all. So, but the area is very, very important because Myanmar is under the resource curse. Because of the resources, we can compete the whole Indonesia and whole Malaysia. We have gold, diamond, rubies, sapphires, and other critical minerals. Because of that and the big land and a small population, so land ownership is a struggle for, existence, and the armed groups are trying the best to control it. So that's the reason we have more than 200 fighting groups. More than 200 fighting groups. So it is very, very difficult to negotiate in our area. And for that area, northern area, actually, the Chinese government also has far control from that production area. But the raw materials, semi-finished products exported out to China is another thing. So production, processing, value adding, and exporting businesses inside our country. But the exported materials goes to China, and we all have leftovers, like, environment depletion. And the other thing is the ownership that I indicate some of the struggle between China and India. This is an area where China and India have the common interests. And this common interest could come up any kind of unexpected conflict. Because a conflict of interest is if there is an interest coming in by somebody said about the Mr. Trump, if something happened with this issue, that area would be out of control. So this is what I would like to respond to you. And I would like to thank very much of my Thai friends, the Thai friends, especially from the Mesai and, Nam Kok and area. Because of them, we got the information that the rare earth production is contaminating the water. This is the first information that we received about the environmental depletion. And I have already discussed with Ms. Kanchana this morning that, like Namkhok, if they can come up to Ayavati with their equipments for lab equipments, we can also, test and raise our voices with evidence so that Myanmar people are also suffering such and such thing. Only thing is, he mentioned that there are difficult groups to communicate. And you said, who is easy to talk? So I would like to return this question to you again. Who is easy to talk with these kind of, groups, illegally or legally, I don't know, but they are doing things that the results, I don't know. I have no evidence at all, but the evidence are from the information from the media. How about your idea?
Do you want to debate?
I've been working on the border with so many projects. The issue, we cannot talk with the Yangon governments because we have to concern with the local fighter that control. So the Thai government is not easy to talk. That's very difficult because when we have to talk with the government and governments. The last resort is that community at the border can talk with the border. Whether the result can be at the answer or not, I think is difficult because at the border, local community, even they talk, they cannot change anything. However, if we hopefully, the ASEAN frameworks of the cross-border pollution at least can be helpful to expedite the way out of this situation because I don't know. I think it's still continue another 10 years, but at least we have to have a hopes on that. So just get back with it.
But the great presenters, two of them suggested some of the takeaway messages on how to work together in ASEAN. Thank you for.
Just a final share po, on why the Philippines is proactively promoting mining or promoting digitalization, renewable energy. I think based on my personal analysis, this is for me, for the Philippines, this is the right time, a critical juncture for the Philippines to correct the path dependency that it has taken to recapture the missed opportunities for industrialization during the post-World War II, as well as the diversification of foreign aids in the 1990s. So we are now banking, based on my personal analysis, we are now banking on the manufacturing sector. We are also banking on what are the successes behind our service sector, service sector, BPO. So what are the success stories behind their growth? So I think we are trying to emulate those success towards our manufacturing sector so we can escape the middle income trap. Thank you.
Thank you. From the discussion, I find it's Myanmar's sovereignty control over Kachin and for those armed group profit-driven misbehaviors. So it's a quite tricky issue. But originally, I think maybe China is good at ecological restoration. Maybe we can, but before, after that, maybe we can move on to that kind of cooperation. And thank you all and for all your in-depth discussion and active participation and attention. I think we still have 10 minutes. We'll maybe discuss further during the coffee break session. Thank you, you all. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator, Professor Tong. And I think we now about to have the briefly coffee break, just like the moderator just mentioned. So please, enjoy your coffee break and come back and probably, refresh a little bit. And 3:45 p.m. will be the session, the third session. Thank you. Thank you all. So welcome back, everyone. This is the last announcement. I would like to step into the role of moderator. So this is under my lead. Okay. So in this session, we will look into the clean power connectivity. And the first delegates to speak about Thailand and China EV cooperations and upgrading rare earth cooperation. So to begin, it is my pleasure to introduce my good friend of mine and the first speaker, Dr. Leo, okay, from Singapore. Please, stage is yours.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. I hope all of us still keep awake. Okay, so my presentation is about the grids. So it's from critical minerals. Many of you already talk about these rare earths, critical minerals, and the green industrialization. So I will talk about the infrastructure which can facilitate this green industrialization. Okay. So my main argument is that a credible, so it's not necessary to be stable, but must be credible ASEAN green power grid can help ASEAN members move up green value chains while supporting reliable, affordable, and low carbon growth. So I will cover three parts. The first part is discussing about the bottleneck of ASEAN green transition. The second one is Singapore as a demand anchor. So it's not a center, it's just one of the anchor. And then grid-enabled industrial ecosystems. The last one is about the cooperation between ASEAN and China. So we have discussed, this morning and the second session also, how to avoid a new green resource trap. We don't want to, because of the resource, get into the resource curse. So actually, a clean industrialization also depends on the enabling infrastructure chain, which including the increase of renewable generation capacity, and then the transmission network, the storage infrastructure, and also the institutional side is the certification, and last one is the industrial users. ASEAN's green transition, actually, like we have discussed, there are lots of bottleneck. But here I want to discuss about the power shortage. So for ASEAN members, we have different level of this problem. First of all, is about Myanmar. So according to the data available in 2024, available production reportedly met only about half of the demand for Myanmar. So this, the reason, of course, we know about, the conflict, the deteriorating of infrastructure, and the inadequate fuel and the civil utility sector financial constraints, which the financial constraint, we'll talk more about this as Singapore can contribute to this. And then for Laos, it's the supply market mismatch. We all know that Laos have a very, substantial hydropower resource, and it's a net exporter of electricity. However, when there are low rainfall or rapid growing demand, for example, the cryptocurrency mining, which used to account for 1/3 of the demand for Laos. So still, the outage can happen in Laos. So Laos has become a net importer recently. So it's for the peak period needs like 600 megawatt, and then of course Laos has made some efforts to solve this problem. So they have this cryptocurrency mining demand restrictions now. So have decreased it from 500 megawatt to 150 last year. And then for Philippines and Vietnam, they don't have the nationwide outage, but still during the peak period, they have this. For example, for Philippines, the Luzon area, they used to between this about 1 month period in 2024, they got 6 red and 20 yellow alerts, and another region gets 7 red and 20 yellow. And then for Vietnam, the power shortage due to heat wave in 2023 caused 1.4 USD billion losses. And then for 2024, to be safe, the government requests some of the large users to reduce their consumption up to 30%. And then for this year, 2026, the localized cuts and the grid stress reappear during severe heat. It's still going on. So even for Vietnam has this problem. And then for Malaysia, we just discussed during the lunch, it used to be a resource abundant country. However, for subnational region, for example, Sabah, which I have visited, the reserve margin is only 79%. Means that if it reaches its peak, the peak demand, then the extra reserve only 77.9%. However, the recommended one should be 25 to 30%. So it's far below the recommended one. For the Peninsula, Malaysia is still okay. And then for Cambodia, Indonesia, and Timor-Leste, it's localized reliability is the challenging. So because of the islands, because of the remote places, so the service quality also very quite challenging. So 3 other economies, including Singapore, Thailand, and Brunei, presently have a relatively adequate system. So for currently, ASEAN actually the targets are increasingly ambitious. However, the integration capacity still has no catch up. So here I want to emphasize these two numbers. Okay, the 8,000 and the 119 gigawatt. This is ASEAN's solar potential. So it's quite high. And for the wind potential is over 300 gigawatt. So with this abundant, I will show you why I said it's high. However, still need the ASEAN still need more than double for the electricity network investment. It's around 22 billion per year by 2035. So here we can see why just now I say the number is the potential is quite big, because you can see that for Singapore, Singapore's demand over 90% the natural gas, and the new 2030 solar deployment target actually only 3 gigawatt, so only 1,000. So that potential compared to demand actually quite high. And then also Singapore has these low carbon imports targets. It's only 6 gigawatt compared to the potential. It's very small. However, this target is stable. That's why I said Singapore can be an anchor as the demand for ASEAN. Then here, so Singapore already has a conditional approval project with ASEAN neighbors, which is 11 projects now, accounted for 8.3 gigawatt, 3 gigawatt for Indonesia. Not just not just the ASEAN neighbor, also including Australia, 2 gigawatt, and then Vietnam, Cambodia, and Malaysia. So this has actually already exceeds more than 8 gigawatt, already exceeds its 2035 target, the 6 gigawatt. So Singapore's long-term demand can improve bankability. So this easier for financing, but only if the host country approvals and the subsea cable governance, willing charges, and the REC recognition are credible. So the willing charges, the willing means the transition of electricity through the third party. And the REC is of course the renewable energy certificate. Certificate is also important for cross-border. So for ASEAN, in addition to the potential, as of 2024, the realized one, there are 2.8 gigawatt operational grid to the grid-to-grid capacity, and for the generation to grid capacity is 7.5 gigawatt, and also the trade, the realized trade is a total of, but that's not for 1 year. It's accumulated. It's 266. So there are already some successful cases and experience for ASEAN economies in terms of the cross-border transition. So here is the most important case I want to introduce, which is Laos, Thailand, Malaysia, and the Singapore LTMS power integrate project. So it's a practical ASEAN power trade corridor. This is a working example of moving green electricity from resource-rich system to demand centers. So we have, I have just explained that Laos and Malaysia can be supplied. Laos has a very, renewable hydro power supplier, and then Malaysia for the peninsula, Malaysia also is a good supplier. And then for Thailand, although itself has no outage now, but as the growth, the manufacturing growth and its location can be a transmission country between Laos and Malaysia. And then Singapore is an importer and off-taker in the resource-constrained system. Yeah, this is a so. This So this project is still going on. Now it's the phase 2. So it's a pathfinder for the ASEAN power grid because it has some dimension. In some dimension, it has provided lessons. For example, for the politics, 4 ASEAN states accepted differentiated roles: supplier, transition country, and the buyer. And for technically, existing interconnectors can enable multilateral trade beyond immediate neighbors. And then for the commercial, renewable trade routes can be contracted and operated with a clear off-lake. However, there are the lessons. So still need there are something still needs to be institutionalized. For example, the continuity beyond leadership changes and project by project negotiations. The other one is that harmonize the grid codes. This is kind of technical, so I can just mention a little bit about it. So when you transfer the power, the transmission for different grid, the code are different, and the congestion rules and the system operator protocols, these are all different for different grids. Even within Malaysia, the East Malaysia and the peninsula, it's different. And then the settlement rules, credit risk arrangement, and the standard willing charges. So these are all, and then the border supply mix, climate risk planning, and the environmental safeguards. These all need further institutional development. So this project is small in terms of the capacity, the megawatt, but it's large. It's an experiment in institutional significance. So for the next step, for this one, need to institutionalize the ASEAN market rules, including the wheeling and the congestion, the settlement and the credit risk, the grid code dispatch, like I have mentioned just now, So here actually there are 4 other, actually in total 4 cases. I have introduced the third one, the Singapore linked one. So actually they are like step-by-step cases. The first one is the China Lao 500 kilowatt kV interconnection. The special aspect of this one is that it's a two-sided. So it's a two-sided transmission connection, because we know for electricity transmission there are AC and DC, the alternable current, which can transfer the electricity 2 ways. The direct one can only transfer 1 way. So this one is the two-way. It's the two-way transition connection. When you use the AC, the two-way transmission, it's more expensive actually, but it's more flexible. Okay, so technologically, this one is feasible. This case have shown us. So this one is China-Vietnam power trade. Actually, it's Vietnam electricity. They have signed EVN. They have this cooperation with China South Grid, China Southern Grid (CSG), for nearly 20 years of the cooperation in cross-border power trading. So this is Vietnam buy electricity from China. So this is a one-way. It's a one-way transmission. However, it has been a long time. So all the institutional, development for the transmission has settled. This is another piece, and then this one for the LTMS project. This one has provided a useful reference for multilateral cooperation in terms of the grid, cross-border grid. And the last piece is this one. And then the last one is the Malaysia as a potential regional bridge. So here, still part of this LTMS project, the grid cooperation with China and the Singapore-Malaysia interconnection planning created complementary opportunities, which the Malaysia-Singapore grid expansion has been up to 2 gigawatt. And then China-Malaysia grid cooperation, which they signed MOUs in October 25, focus on the power system planning, smart grid technology. Just now we talk about the AI in this area. So the smart grid also, it's about the AI and the digital solutions and the grid modernization. So all these are, it's going on. So from those case studies, we have the lessons. Here I just discussed for 4 aspects. The first one is the infrastructure momentum is growing. So China Laos shows fast delivery of high voltage interconnection because it's the AC. And then the LTMS PIP shows rules are harder than lines. So now it's the rule part, the soft side. And then the bilateral trade can be a foundation. So China-Vietnam illustrates the value of bilateral balancing. APG can build on this through ASEAN Power Grid, can build on this through third-party access and transparent billing. So these are all parallel cases. Singapore can support a credible demand benchmark. The importer license, the carbon accounting, and the bankability requirements can support project quality and investor confidence. All these have been set up in Singapore. For Singapore-related transactions. And then inclusive green industrialization because local value captures, which we said we can, how we can avoid the trap. So grid concessions and renewable exports can include skill upgrading, data transparency, and the fair revenue sharing arrangement. If we have the grid, we have all the data, all the transparency, cannot be guaranteed, but it's more feasible, right? And then so investment design is also important as engineering design. So the bankable grid projects this, the cross-border grid needs lots of money, needs predictable demand. If you want to get a loan, get financing, you need a predictable demand and the clear rules and the fair risk allocations, which the IEA says that annual electricity network investment in Southeast Asia needs to more than double to around 22 billion by 2035. So we need lots of money, which we need the bankable demand. Oh, sorry, I forgot you. This is I forgot you this one. Okay, and the last one. So to reach my the title of this presentation, from mineral resource to green industrial ecosystem. So the grid, the power grid, is what links critical minerals to high value manufacturing and the services. What we have said, the processing, the manufacturing, all these need the reliable, credible power supply. So clean, reliable power supply can make downstream industrialization greener and more competitive. So currently, actually, in China, there's a transition, the transition of the, from China's east part to west part. They use the energy from west part to provide all the data center services or the green transition for the east part. So the same thing can be done for ASEAN. Cross-border clean power can help resource-rich ASEAN economies attract higher value processing, manufacturing, and the services. So just now we discussed how to attract or how to get the technology transfer from China, right? But in our interview, in our field trip, when we discussed with those investors, Chinese investors, Japanese investors, and the U.S. investor, one of the concerns that all of them mentioned is the reliable power supply. Yeah. So the ASEAN-China cooperation, the last part, there are opportunities and also shared safeguards. So China's scale, like all other areas, can accelerate the deployment. ASEAN frameworks can support resilience and the long-term value creation because of the divergence of ASEAN's development and all the features. So the cooperation agenda can start from the grid equipment, the cable engineering, subsea cable engineering, batteries and the digital grid solutions, and then some joint project linked to local jobs, skills development, the skills development and the procurement and technology exchange. That's the spillover of the infrastructure project. And then the ESG safeguards, transparent contracting and cyber data security standards. These are also the digitalization and the green industrialization all connected. And then manage the concentration risks through interoperability, skills, and the diversified partnership. So diversification here is very helpful. And then so here, since I'm from Singapore, so Singapore's role, Singapore can be a market maker, given its long period credible demand, and also standards partners, because Singapore, in terms of the institutional development, it has set up, like I have mentioned that. So it's a financial hub, blended finance, insurance, project structure, and also governance hub, rules, arbitration, and the capacity building. The standard is the renewable energy certification, the carbon accounting, and the ESG. So the policy package, it's just personal view. For ASEAN-China Green Power Grid, there are 5 aspects. First of all, is we need to treat the grid links as a regional green industrial infrastructure. It's a must. It's not something, just value added. And then the second one is that create common rules for multilateral power trade. Some standardized wheeling charges, congestion management, curtailment and settlement. So here, the create common rules for multilateral power trade. This one is most technical ones. We have a lot of report analysis in this area. And then build a credible cross-border renewable energy certificate system. The fourth one is use Singapore-based finance to crowd in long tenure capital. Here we can use the multilateral development bank finance like World Bank, ADB, and also the export credit guarantees and the private capital, which is the Singapore's advantages. And then the embedded local capability building. So we must have the local capability and the ESG in ASEAN-China projects. So my final message is, so avoid a green resource trap is not only about minerals. It is also about how clean power standards and the finance are governed. And Singapore can anchor demand and the standards so ASEAN renewables become bankable regional assets. So become assets, not just resource. The difference is that assets can help to make money, resource not necessarily, right? So, and then ASEAN-China cooperation can accelerate deployment while supporting technology exchange, ESG safeguards, and fair value sharing. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Professor Leo. So she started to have a very good presentation about how to make build a resilient ASEAN's green power grid. So she mentions about the key points, and she wants to deliver that increasing the mismatch, from the trap, the gap, and how can we make the bridge. So from point of ASEAN Power Grid or APG is fully utilized by using the Singapore like she just mentioned. So the key point that Singapore is the main anchor as a plan to import, and from the, you can see the platform that she was presented about Singapore have a financial center, and also and something that she want to propose this is like how can this thing is a balance, because you can see some of a mismatch, right, between Laos and Myanmar, which is some of the lag behind of the other members of the ASEAN from the mainland of Southeast Asia into the small island like Singapore. That was the thing that the policy recommendations by Professor Leo, how we expand about the cross-border grid infrastructure, harmonize regional electricity trading rules, develop a common renewable energy certificates or REC system, and also mobilize brand financial through Singapore. So she wrap up by promoting ASEAN-China cooperation in technology, investment, and the workforce development. Conclusion is pretty nice though. Even APG is essential for regional energy integration, combining ASEAN renewable sources. Singapore, yes, had a strength in financial and governance strengths. China technologies, investment, the region can accelerate the green transition and strengthen long-term economic resilience. So that was some of the portion from the first start of Professor Leo. It's covered from almost 100%, I guess. Okay, so thank you, Professor Leo. So maybe we come back into, maybe question and Q&A session. Secondly, let me move on to the second presenter, Professor Srinath. I think she will be present and deliver the speech from the Thailand perspective. So strengthen Thailand-China cooperation in EV industry. And Professor Srinath, and stage is yours.
Thank you very much. So today I'm going to talk about the EV industry in Thailand. So any opportunity for the local value creation. And let me start. Okay. So I'm going to talk about 4 points here. The first one is Thailand EV industry. Why EV industry? Why Thailand? Secondly, what is the current state of the downstream processing in EV industry? Thirdly, what are the driver and any barrier for industrial upgrading? And last one, about the strategy to enhance local value creation. Let's start with the first one. For the EV industry, you may have heard about Thailand being the hub for automobile for quite some time. And when the technology change, the EV is coming. So we have to, adjust ourselves and how to remain competitive. So by that one, you can see that actually this is the first purpose here, and EV industry is a driving growth for economic growth for Thailand. And one example just to show is that in 2023, Thailand export a total of 562 billion worth of EV component. Second purpose of the EV industry is that we are in the transition toward the sustainable and low carbon economy. And in the middle of that, transport sector is the key. With that one way to become green is, like to use the EV in, many kind of transportation. As you can be here in Thailand, you have seen many, Grab car, the electric EV car, and also we also have the tuk-tuk, the tricycle that use electricity. So those are ways that, the region can move forward into the sustainable one. Besides those two objectives that the EV industry is serving, also is aligned with our national strategy. Let's start from the usual one, the 13th National Economic and Social Development Plan. The idea is to have the high value added industry, and EV is one of them. Secondly, about the Thailand Bio-Circular Green Strategy or BCG. So in that part, how to go environmental friendly and also still remain competitive in the industry. So the EV is one part of them. And to be specific, the last one, the National EV Roadmap, or we just say like 30 at 30. So 30% of domestically produced vehicle will be electric by 2030. So these are the plan and how the arrow can move in the same direction and also to serve the country purpose and objective. With that one, let's see some more data about Thailand in case of the EV manufacturing hub. Thailand, we produce more than 40,000 battery electric vehicle or BEV domestically in 2025. It increased around like 63% from a year before. And in 2025, so we start exporting to other market. To have that kind of situation, we receive a lot of investment from other country. So the Board of Investment of Thailand, they have approved more than 130 billion baht in EV supply chain investment. It ranging from BEV assembly project, battery manufacturing, component, and also the charging infrastructure. And if we want to see where they are, these are the map. Mostly they cluster in the middle part of Thailand, including the eastern part, the Eastern Economic Corridor. And you see the company, the multinational firm who come into the region. Mainly is China, followed by Japan, Korea, Hyundai is over there, and we have BMW from Germany. So those those are the year that they start the production. So you can see how the investment come into the region, and this is what we try to keep our competitiveness. With that one, thinking about value chain, Thailand may be a little bit different because we don't have that, rare earth like Indonesia and Philippines, but we do participate in the global value chain. And with this one here from the ASEAN Investment Report 2025, lining up the EV supply chain from the upstream, mainstream, until the downstream one. For sure, the upstream, we need the rare earth, nickel, for example. So Indonesia is a main player here. Thailand, we are more to the middle stream and also the downstream one. So beside Thailand, we also have Indonesia, Malaysia, and also Vietnam in that part in terms of battery and also the EV production. And I think in case of Thailand here, since I think the automobile and EV to be specific now is to become our key engine of growth. And we try to manage how to really utilize and also, like be prosperous when joining in the EV supply chain. Since the midstream is kind of like so many sections in there. So if we zoom into the detail in the midstream, so we have the cell component manufacturing, those are the battery. So Thailand can play part in that, but for sure with the foreign direct investment from other country. Assembly and production, because we have experience in terms of the automobile hub, but for sure the firm itself, they have to adjust themselves to learn more how to become competitive and equipable for the EV production as well. So we have Indonesia, Malaysia, Thailand, and Vietnam. So you see that many players come to invest in the region. And with this one here, I think in terms of the region, we have to work in terms of the grouping, co-producing. But for Thailand to be specific, we have to look closer as well. With that one, if we see where we are, I think the map is not only for Thailand, but it's not only for ASEAN, but also other countries in the world as well, including China, who are the key player in the EV production. This map here is trying to show that in terms of the production, China not only produce inside the country, but also produce outside the country and use that as a springboard to serve the third market. So by that one here, you can see like other Asia Pacific in there. Beyond the domestic market, Chinese manufacturer also positioning Thailand to be the production base and also the exporting base to other region, ASEAN, for example, Australia, European, and New Zealand. So by that one, how can we co-producing this kind of like, EV market here? With that one, if we look more into detail among those countries, you can see that in the first graph on the left-hand side, the yellow one is Southeast Asia. Those are the overseas Chinese EV manufacturing. So we know that a big portion produced in ASEAN. Secondly, if we look closer, where in ASEAN that Chinese firm come to invest, you can see that the red color is for Chinese firms. So the largest one go to Thailand. So you can see that Southeast Asia is primary location, and to be specific, is Thailand here. And maybe because we have like a good infrastructure and experience in terms of the automobile industry. But it's not only that. If we look closer, because in terms of EV, we have heard about a lot about import dependent. So if you look at the like Asia Pacific and Thailand, it's gonna be like the fourth block. Okay. You can see that we rely a lot on the Chinese import, and OEM is the how to say the usual way of producing EV in general. So that's why I think some issues also happen in terms of how to allow the local to participate more in terms of production. So that some issue that we have to think about. With that one, come into like. How about think about this whole situation? Let analyze more any driver or any barrier that will bring Thailand to utilize or participate more or maybe get more benefit from the EV industry. In case of Thailand, I mean, if refer to the case of Laos, I think we share some commonality here in terms of the oil crisis, encourage people to use more of the EV. But in case of Thailand, two more factors one is that the government policy that encourage the entering of the EV, and also the presence of Chinese firm that make the EV price more reasonable and people can afford it. About the policy here, actually for Thailand, we rely a lot on automobile industry, what the EV comes, so we still want to hold on as a key engine of growth. So that's why some policy are in the picture. It starts by the initial kickoff around like, you can see from the timeline 2017 to around 2021 during that time. When to be specific in EV 3.0 around 2022. So there's the 30 at 30 policy forming up. And lastly, the latest one is EV 3.5 in 2024. This one is a little small, but it kind of like show you how the policy transit from the EV 3.0 and to 3.5. Those are all the policy measures in terms of subsidy on the demand side to the consumer, excise tax reduction, import tariff reduction, and offset ratio. I think this is the one that make it kind of like a big change from any policy before. I would say for the offsetting one, you can see like 1-for-1 for 2024. So if they import one car, they have to produce locally one of them. But you can see that the ratio getting higher. If you move on to the right-hand side, EV 3.5, the number increased to 1-for-2, for 2026. So it means every one import car, they have to produce here 2 cars. So those are the mission to have like Thailand become the key production base for the EV industry. And that's how it keep going with all the production here. So I think in terms of production is kind of like local requirement, already mentioned about it, but more detail is how it happened. Just recently, 22 July 2025, we are also aware about those kind of like, participation more about from the local producer and local firms. So they have something they call local content promotion It aimed to encourage investors in the EV-related industry to increase the use of domestically sourced material. They have the project they call Made in Thailand or MIT here. So they request minimum domestic content. So if you see from the table, it's around like 40 to 45%, but for the equipment allow 15%. Just to be sure that the local can play role in this kind of like EV industry. What else? They also have tried to help the local producer. There is a platform for local manufacturer to engage directly with the global EV company. So with that one, they can like BI serve as the industrial linkage services to build a more robust EV domestic EV supply chain. And they have something like the sourcing day event to co-host and like they can like matching between the local and also the foreign firm. So those are the drivers that try to enhance the EV industry in Thailand. Based on that, we don't have rich in terms of rare earth, but we try to move on in other direction. But the thing is still like some challenges still there. Even though the local requirement mentioned about that, but it means that we have to be ready as well to be able to work on those EV industry. So summary mentioned about knowledge gap for the worker as well. They need to have like new set of skill, both in terms of designing, selling, and also providing the service. I mean, after sales service become the issues, after the EV expand, the adoption of EV expand in Thailand, some driver also mentioned about, like if your car get broken somewhere outside Bangkok, maybe it's difficult to find someone to fix it. So it's the whole process here. Secondly, relatively less technology development in EV and battery manufacturing. Because I think for the automobile industry, Thailand, we do serve in terms of OEM in general. So, maybe more role in terms of R&D and then, the technology development is what we looking for. Thirdly, since you may have seen like EV 3.0, but, like the ratio like 1:1 and 1:2 that the Chinese firm have to produce in Thailand. Some of them cannot meet that deadline, so they have to extend it a little bit. So it's kind of like affect briefly. And the last point is that the EV 3.5, as you see from the duration, is 2024 to 2027. So the question is, I think the private sector also start to discuss about what should be next, what's going to happen next if we would go back to more import, something like that. So with that one, you need some suggestion or some strategy. So I think it more to requirement is one thing, but for sure some more cooperation between like Thailand and China and also maybe other ASEAN country. I think we hear the repeating word until now that capacity building still there and collaboration in terms of target training and knowledge program. For government and private stakeholder. I think right now it's more to the, like sharing the experience and the best practice is what we need in general, especially when the situation come into the point that governance and regulation become more and more important and how to get more knowledge about how to work in the EV industry. Secondly, invest in coordinated R&D program to advance battery technology and high-value EV components. So the knowledge transfer is still necessarily there. Thirdly, to strengthen the localization policy and also provide a target incentive to promote domestic EV manufacturing and assembly. Case of Thailand is interesting. We are the key production base for automobile, but we don't have Thai brand at the global level. So actually, that's a conflict. That's the interesting, like paradox when I teach the student as well, because this is where we are, why the global value chain is very important. And that's why we can co-producing, and prosperous in the EV and the digital world. And lastly, how to foster the partnership with the private and international stakeholder to develop a resilient domestic supply chain. EV at one shot, it helps in terms of turning toward the green economy and so on. But for sure in the future, for the green supply chain, all the production have to become green and traceability. I think those keywords we hear in the morning gonna be in the picture. So by that one, that's how I think that in case of Thailand, also ASEAN country as well, but this is okay for the example of case of Thailand and China, we can cooperate more and how to move forward in the future. For sure, Thailand, we need to, like depend on the automobile and EV industry. So we keep moving. That's why we see recently the government also visit China and many EV companies. So you can see the transition and progress. So that will be all from me. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So that's Dr. Sanina's mentioned about the future of EV industry, opportunities for the local value creation. It was something like a paradox, confusing, and also the future because Thailand did not have our own brand. We also just like, to put in words, like consume them all. Right? That's why when you create the local content, it's just like, how can we start and how long we're going to take? Because the campaign about EV 3.5 almost, reaching to the expire date, right? In 2027. So the message that she want to point and, deliver is like the image of ASEAN leading EV manufacturing hub. Who will start? Because from the first presentation from Liao, also we are full, like capacity from that, but come into the specific country by country, seem to have some of individual or some of conflict among itself as well. The knowledge, for example, the regulation about the EV and automobile from Japan, and also mixing things. And I think so far we did not talk about regulation about this thing yet. When you have some of the accident happen, because the number of car in Thailand after the shortage of electricity from the the war in the Middle East, now is like unstoppable demand. From the first declining trend, the price seemed to be cheaper, but it's been gone up after the conflicts occur in Thailand. That's what some of the concerns that how can the global value chain, when you mention about green environment, a green economy will be coming up. So you can see a flood of the Chinese investment in Thailand. And when Professor Sirinat mentioned about BYD, JAC, like a Great Wall Motor, that was a number I haven't seen in Thailand quite often. But I just got back from Ho Chi Minh City and Hanoi. What the number of the EV from Vietnam also increasing as well. I think that was something that maybe some of the question maybe come up later after your presentation. But now giving me a room to have the recommendation from the MIT, but it's not Massachusetts. It's a made in Thailand product requirement to extend about the R&D in research and EV, the technologies, enhance workforce upskill and reskill, and deepen Thailand and China industrial collaboration. But my own perspective under my academic year is like, why Thailand have so many steps or even a slow or speed at some points? That was something I want to add up to Professor Ninat from my point of view. So conclusion, it's still her strength that to sustain the success, we will have a greater local value creation through innovation, skill human capital, stronger domestic suppliers, and deepen integration. And don't forget that we also have Laos and Myanmar. We still have some mismatch in terms of capacity building and education as well. So we put in those kind of white paper after that. I think I want to throw into the floor and want to get some of the feedback. The reward is Thai food, okay, for the end of the day. So let this kind of opportunity to the most handsome gentleman from Vietnam, okay. So he's like want to deliver the last presentation and under my session. So from a delegation from Vietnam, want to Professor Tuan Tuan, acting and director of the Center for Development and Economic Diplomacy, a researcher at the Vietnam Institute for Strategic and Industrial Studies. Sorry, he will speak on the NACT Vietnam. Sir, stage is yours.
It's a pleasure, but also a challenge to speak in the last person because it seemed like I have the chance to test all my points, and it seems that previous speaker agree with me. I don't have much to say now. Anyway, I'm not a technical expert on this issue, but I'm more a kind of a person who like economic laws, and I would like to approach it from economic laws, economic principle. And my presentation will have 5 parts. First one, I would change the atmosphere by telling a positive, successful story of the joint venture between Vietnam and China. And next, I would analyze the 2 key objectives and also the 2 key demands of ASEAN, to put it very simply. And the third point is the complementarity between China and ASEAN, which I think I would go fast on this part. And the fourth part is about the challenge for ASEAN to achieve the 2 key objectives. And the fifth part is about recommendation. So for the first one, I would like to talk about a successful story, joint venture between VinFast and Gotion on battery. So in August 2021, VinFast, a Vietnamese famous vehicle EV maker, signed MOU with Gotion High-Tech of China. The goal is to supply the lithium iron phosphate battery, the LFP, and the study to organize to open the first LFP cell gigafactory in Vietnam. And within about 4 years, we see from the opening from the broke ground on 2021 till 2023, they already have a joint venture. And the joint venture worth $257 million, design capacity of 5 gigawatt hours a year, which equal about 30 million battery cells. And in this joint venture, Gotion holds 51% of the share, and VNS hold remaining 49%. In 2023, Gotion went further, invest $150 million equity investment in VinFast ahead of VinFast NASDAQ listing. So it's a very strong commitment that ties the Chinese partner long-term interest with the Vietnamese firm. So by the 2025, the plant was operating, and the LFP cell was out. And because the cell plant sits next to the VNS battery pack facility and also near to the EV assembly in Haiphong, it become a closed loop. Yeah, so that the battery go into the package and it go into the car, and the car sell to the world. So there are many implications in this successful story. It helped a Vietnamese company, the VNS, to move up the value chain. It creates job, and it also somewhat transfer technology, not much, and it also helps complete the EV ecosystem in Vietnam. And it's very important that now a Chinese company and technology embedded in a supply chain of an EV maker in Vietnam, and the product is sold globally. So I think this gives a question that if this model work for battery cell, could it be a model to expand for China-ASEAN Rare Earth Cooperation? So I'm thinking a lot about the need or the demand of ASEAN. I think we just reduce it into two simple objectives. First, all ASEAN countries want to upgrade their industry related to rare earths mining, because no one want to stay at the raw material exporter. And secondly, we all want to have a strategic autonomy for resilience from the past lesson we learned from the COVID supply chain disruption and the current energy crisis. So I think we can narrow down this to 2 key objectives. And talking about China-ASEAN potential, I think we have so many potential. It's already mentioned by our colleagues. To put it simple, ASEAN brings the mining leadership, the processing dominant, the downstream tech, and ASEAN has the resource, labor force, and also a huge market for end products. And we also have many frameworks. So this is just to name a few. The ASEAN, within ASEAN, we have the Mineral Cooperation Action Plan. We have a Plan of Action for Energy Cooperation. We have ICFTA, RCEP, and ACFTA. And another successful story is Indonesia. And I think this is due to the strong demand of the market. So even after the 2019 when Indonesia banned the export of ore, raw ores. The exporting volume of Indonesia to the global still increased from 16% to 40%. And what interesting is that even with the strict law in Indonesia, the China firm, instead of in the past they import the ore and manufacture in China, the Chinese firm shifts investment toward Indonesia and export and set up the factory to process the ore. And this story shows the potential of the rare earth market even when the government tightened the rule. But then we're still having challenge to the two objectives. So for the objective of ASEAN to upgrade industry, we still face the technology bottleneck. ASEAN still lack access to the advanced technology for rare earth extraction and separation. And without the technical knowledge, ASEAN cannot develop advanced processing industry. That is a reality that all ASEAN countries are now facing. And capital alone is not enough. ASEAN needs to be able to access to technology and absorb technology to upgrade the industry. The second challenge is geological data and investment certainty. Currently, the reserve estimate across ASEAN vary widely. Surveys are incomplete and report methods differ from country to country. So the investor need reliable data before they can commit at scale. And in the end, the investment confidence is from reliable data. The third challenge is environmental and social governance. The green supply chains must be green all the way from the upstream to downstream. So if we have any environmental incident, labor dispute, or conflict with local community, the whole, reputation of the supply chain suffer. So the issue of ESG is not about law, but it's about competitiveness. The object two, we have the structural reality here. We see that, of course, it's very clear China holds 44 million tons in terms of reserve. But in terms of production, China accounts for 70% of mining and 90% of refining technology. And ASEAN countries like Vietnam and Malaysia together refine less than 5,000 tons. So this is very high structural asymmetry. And it's built by decades of investment and capability building in China. And it shows where the value chain is presented. ASEAN mostly upstream, and China covering most of the midstream and downstream. And if ASEAN and China do not handle this asymmetry well, there is excessive concentration of ownership, technology, and export market. It creates a new form of dependency. And this is a structural risk when one side is small and depend on the other. And point number two is regional fragmentation. It's another additional challenge. ASEAN members frequently negotiate independently with external partners and reducing the collective bargaining power. And fragmented national strategy also risks duplicating industrial capacity while preventing the emergence of efficient regional value chain. So the recommendation. I think a more sustainable ASEAN-China critical mineral partnership should pursue both industrial upgrading and allows strategic diversification. China-ASEAN cooperation should evolve from conventional buyer and seller relationship toward a joint industrial development. The successful story of the battery partnership between VinFast and Gotion is a very good example. It demonstrates that technologies, equity participation, and long-term commercial alignment can support domestic manufacturing capabilities. And it creating a new value chain rather than simply facilitating the resource exports. But there is still room for improvement. For example, the holding of the share is still by China, and the technology is still within a China company. So in the future, China can think about gradually sharing portion of the technology to ASEAN, so that ASEAN can also move up the value chain. And that is really helping ASEAN to move on. And secondly, ASEAN should fight fragmentation by utilizing the regional frameworks to establish common standards for transparency, environmental performance, and local value addition. Third, ASEAN need to enhance the state oversight and encourage international cooperation. Stronger regulation and international openness are compatible. There are serious consequences when government fail, such as the pollution of the Mekong River, as our colleagues mentioned earlier. On the other hand, the successful case of Indonesia nickel proved that even strict but transparent law can attract more investment, not less. Fourth, given the structural asymmetry and technology concentration, both China and ASEAN must reassess the resilience of rare earth supply chains and manage the risk of overdependence. By economic laws, it is not safe when one side structurally depends on the other side. And the fifth one is benefits sharing mechanism should become institutionalized and reach the local community. It reflects the common goal of ASEAN and China in putting people at the center of development. And I think there are four priorities we can look at. Firstly is a clear roadmap for localization to give the rising local ownership, supply, and management over time. Two, community development funds financed by a fixed share of the project revenues. Three, contract and revenue transparency so the local citizens see what their resource earn. And fourth is the ESG standard with the environment performance, labor right, and community consultation, co-developed and jointly monitored by ASEAN and Chinese institutions. So this protects the community and the green reputation of ASEAN-China cooperation. So my final message is that ASEAN just have two goals: move up the value chain and maintain resilience and strategic autonomy. And upgrading the value chain is win-win, especially in the context of trade war, where rule of origin and traceability are now deciding market access. Products that made in ASEAN, made by ASEAN, can enter broader market as long as the value added by ASEAN is enough. And the deep localization is also a good business for the Chinese firm too. It protects the both side market access. And third is to reduce overdependence, as I mentioned before. And the fourth, I think, is also important. And I don't see anyone mention it, but we need to avoid the geopolitical aspect of this cooperation, because the rare earth cooperation today is not a technical issue, it's a security issue. It's very sensitive, and it could become a trigger for strategic misunderstanding, especially with the Trump administration. And ASEAN, we very much sympathize with China in terms of using this as a tool to contain the bully of the US. But on the other hand, ASEAN could be a victim in between when the trade war escalated. And so, therefore, we need to be very careful on this aspect, and we need to ensure that the cooperation is void of geopolitical intention. And a good partnership is that it helps upgrading the value chains in ASEAN. It helps ASEAN enhance the strategic autonomy, but it will not divide or fragment the world further. This is my humble contribution to the seminar today. Thank you.
It's very humble conclusion from Professor, a gentleman from NACT from Vietnam, Professor Tu An Tuan, from raw materials to co-creation. So he present a lot of things, and that will be, we not prepare in advance about the technology that has been, like cooperation between China and Vietnam, in particular the battery industry. Okay, so the key points that Professor Tu An Tuan just mentioned is the rare earth should shifts from exporting raw materials to building integrated regional value chains. And because of the very sensitive, and also it could be coming like geopolitics, like you just only one that mentioned at the end, seem to be a nice conclusion that I will like to propose afterward. But before that, the key point are the two strategic objectives: industrial upgrading, strategic autonomy, and VinFast and GoChain partnership is some of example that shows. And for the key challenges in China and ASEAN, in the NACT forum is a limited access to advanced technology. So how can, ASEAN can get this kind of opportunity to get help, like capacity building in terms of technology from China. We also very close to China in terms of cooperation, and you could be benefit and also the victim at the same time to be bullied by geopolitics way of life. Then we are now dealing with the war. So rare earth and rare chance could be happen at the same time. So this is the very good thing and the good thought that we have to be careful about that. But it doesn't mean that we cannot activate and cooperate. That is the platform of ASEAN that no one want to get out, but people want to get in. That is the ASEAN cooperations. That people want to be friends, and that's the friendship. That's why we are here today. And so I will end up my talk with full stop here and open the floor for an opportunity for the Q&A. And we have some of the few questions remain, and the stage is open. The floor is open, and now feel free to raise hand and put a vertical sign. And then now, Professor Fahad, just for the first one, you want to have the question, please?
Thank you. I should clarify that I am not a professor. Yes, sir. Yeah, I would feel honoring all the other professors in the room. My first question goes to the madam from Singapore, Li Hao. When you mentioned on your interviews, you mentioned that they wanted reliable power. And I just wanted some clarification. Was it any particular industry or just overall? So who mentioned reliable power supply, which is their main concern? And for the delegate from Thailand, Ms. Sinenat, I wanted to ask your opinion on the recent news on EVs in Thailand and the concerns about the ending of the national, I think the 3.5 EV. And what's your opinion on that? Do you share the similar concerns on the oversupply of the China's market in Thailand? Or I just like to get some opinions on that. Thank you.
That not to question it. Yeah, just answer Rio and Sinina.
Yeah, actually for the reliable power supply, we have I have two cases here to share. One is for Indonesia, the other one is for Vietnam. So for Indonesia, actually, we have discussed this during the lunch. So for those nickel mining companies, they're also doing processing now, right? But they find that the power supply not that stable, not reliable. So they have two. Actually, it's those nickel companies. They also build up the power generation for themselves. That's one case. The other one is for Indonesia, actually mentioned in my slides. It's 2023. That's actually the year that lots of Chinese companies rush in Vietnam to set up their China Plus One supply chain in Vietnam. But the same year, Vietnam has this power shortage during the summer because of the heat. So the Chinese investors lost lots of money during that power shortage. Yeah, that's two cases. Thank you.
Thank you for the question. I think in terms of the federal institute in Thailand, they're so worried about the ending of the EV 3.5. And I think what do we do? Our prime minister and the team also went to China, so maybe they try to see more about moving up the value chain in a way that one piece from the news is also mentioned that they visit like Chang'an Automobile and they plan to have like the first overseas production base. Besides that, we're looking forward to become like R&D center. So that's one move from the government. I think they are fully aware. I mean, it's quite a while about how the local can participate in the value chain. So I think this is one of the first move. But in terms of oversupply, we see that. I still remember in the first wave of EV in Thailand. So people line up and put the money for the down payment, but no car yet. Any car that come, they will get it just right away. But after that, it slowed down a bit, But with the the war in Iran and during that time, so it quite become popular again. Maybe because of the price lower, and I think the market will adjust itself in Thailand in a way, the demand supply. But since, as I mentioned, the automobile-related industry is a key engine of growth for the region. So I heard that some people discuss about which way we should go because we still have our traditional IC from Japanese firm. You know, they are the big player here. In majority of the market, still the ICE one. But I think they're thinking more how to have the strategy that should be the one how to balance with the traditional majority and also how to move forward to catch up with the EV one. Yeah. So I think the government tried that way, and that's why BOI also, come up with the local content. So they try to get to the point of where we can move up the value chain. Yeah. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Sininat. And other questions from the floor? Oh, what you ask?
Okay. Yeah, actually my question is for Sinina and the Vietnam also. Yeah, so about the technology transfer. So based on the study for China and Singapore, actually, both of them, they start from OEM. And then after years, they get, the trained engineers, very high quality, and also they become the R&D center, the regional R&D, especially for example, Singapore now for many advanced manufacturing, they become the R&D center. So I wonder this kind of technology transfer or spillover is happening in Thailand and Vietnam in terms of EV sector. That's the first question. The second question is AI related. So EV actually is quite close to the AI, the robot. So in China, they already have this dark factory, right? So my concern is that maybe before you move up the value chain, already the robot, the dark factory already moved to Thailand. Then you have no chance to train your engineers. So they just take your place and use the dark factory to produce EV and export. So do you have any preparation for this?
Before that answer, maybe let Tuan think a little bit, but have a second question and you want to collect and Professor Siddhitep. Okay.
I think my question would go on as a reaction to all the three professors, Professor Lee, Professor Sininat, and Professor Tu. So first, thank you, Professor Lee, for shifting the discussion, particularly shifting paradigm from the resource trap to how we manage and govern, right, the green energy. So I think one of the issues, yes, I agree that Singapore can be an anchor, right? Because when we think about sustainable green energies, we need to think about economy of scale. And Singapore offers quite a large economy of scale. But if we look through the whole ASEAN picture, right? How can we deal with energy security? That's an issue as well when it comes to energy. Right? And I think the same thing would go to Professor Sina and Professor Tu, particularly when Professor proposed that we should have like regional division of labor. Well, regional division of labor, I would not think about just China and ASEAN. In ASEAN, ourselves, maybe we need the internal division of labor, which I think is naturally going on at some point. We see Singapore as a hub of financial and those entrepreneurial hub already, because Singapore doesn't have a national resource, but human resource and other knowledge, right? And then other country, how each country can join this regional division of labor in ASEAN, because we need to avoid geopolitics. And since if we try, every country try to compete, right? For example, Thailand is drawing EV investment from China. Vietnam is drawing EV investment from China. Indonesia can also do the same. So at the end of the day, we end up, everyone compete with each other. And that is not a healthy competition. Maybe we need to look for regional division of labor in ASEAN, right? And that would be something that we need to look at it. Also, I think I'm very sorry I missed the morning class because today I have a class. I teach global China, so I have to engage with China in the morning before coming here. So and one thing that is happened to me because today in my class we talk about China footprint, particularly in Africa. At some point, Africa is similar to ASEAN, different country and unstable political system and regime. But some countries are resourceless, some country doesn't have resources and landlocked country as well. So one of the things is in my class we talk about this and with my student we talk about when we look at China, normally we look at Chinese firm and China as a monolithic entity. But in reality, if you want to build a grid, a transnational grid, if you want to build an EV industry, or even if you want to develop a battery for the EV. So one of the questions is, who are we dealing with? Of course, the government signed MOU and stipulate the policy, but which agent? Because we have a state-owned enterprise at a national level from China, with they look for profit and at the same time national image. But then we have a provincial level state-owned enterprise, which they also care about national image of China, but not that much. The main goal is to reap the profit. And then we have those private investor whose main goal is for profit only. So in this sense, it seems that when we deal with the technology transfer, we attract FDI from China, foreign direct investment. It seems that maybe we need to be cautious who are we dealing with. Of course, the government would try to regulate and support for the sake of ASEAN and China friendship. But on the ground, there is this sophisticated factor that I think we need to take it into our own calculation.
You want to start to answer, Professor Ditep? Okay, Leo.
My first question is, we discussed a lot about this energy security, especially because of the Hormuz. Many of the ASEAN countries actually heard, and this is also surprised me that I although I'm now Singaporean, but not knowing Singapore very well, because I heard that after after it happened, actually Australia and New Zealand, they asked for Singapore for help. They want to buy electricity from Singapore and they want to buy the natural gas from Singapore. I thought Singapore is the first one, heard, but actually not. So Singapore I think it has very good experience and also technology in terms of the storage of the energy, including the electricity, the natural gas, and the petroleum. So in this way, this area, I think Singapore would be very happy to, help and or exchange with other ASEAN members. That's why Singapore now is pushing the development of the power grid (AGP) very hardly, because once you have a very diversified power grid together, it will increase the resilience of this power supply. Because when one nation has the heat wave, the other one won't have, right? So when you are at the peak period, but the other ASEAN member may not. So in this way, that's the first way to improve the resilience. The second one is that Singapore is too small, although it has the technology, has the governance to build up its storage. Still small, but other nation country, other ASEAN members, you have the land, you have the space, right? So if you all use the Singapore technology to build up your storage, this can also improve the resilience of the whole grid. Yeah, that's about the energy security. Another one about Africa. We have also have some study about Africa. So. Actually, I remember last year my presentation is about overseas industrial park. Overseas industrial park, right? So when you negotiate with one company, unless it's a big company like a BYD, it's very hard for the government. For the government's cost is very high. So I think one of the solutions is to build this kind of industrial park. So China is also trying to, push this overseas industrial park because for them, before it's just SOE or centralized SOE to invest in ASEAN in Africa. Now lots of SMEs from China, they want to invest overseas, and when those SME invest outside, it's also very vulnerable for them. So they want to go abroad together. And for the host country, also the same. I think it's quite similar. Like if you can just negotiate with one industrial park, so those industrial parks are actually big companies, but it's not a developer, not a real estate developer. They provide the law service, they provide the financial service to all those company, invested in their park. So I think this is it's a way for good for both sides. The only thing we need to take the lesson of those scam camp. So the industrial park, actually for China, Suzhou Industrial Park, I don't know if we will visit them. And then for Singapore, we have the One North and the Jurong. We all have lots of this kind of industrial park. I think if we can improve the governance for those industrial park, this should be a good solution. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, so start with the technology transfer spillover. Does it happen? EV may be different from the ICE automobile in general, because that one we have more than 10,000 pieces. For sure, the local contractor, they can produce more, they can learn from that one. But with the EV one, few pieces of part and components. So I would say right now, from what they mentioned in the fields, it's like transfers spillover still not there yet. That's why they have the local content. In terms of AI, I agree with you that AI is play a lot of role in the R&D. But I'm sure if they be here, so maybe some part of the in terms of the local, how to say localization in terms of understand the consumer, and also other judgment from the people. So I maybe bring to see more about how AI can equip the local engineer to work better. So try to see of the good way, that one. And in terms of the regional, regional division of labor, I think it's happened in many fields. I mean, in general, for the labor shortage, surplus in a way. So division of labor, I still believe in the market mechanism though, because where the demand is, and then it can happen. For competition, that's a classic question, to say frankly. When we talk about ASEAN, people are we fighting, keeping competing for the same thing. I think I have to reflection on those questions though. The first question, I talked to some friend, she goes to some multinational firm. She said in general, investor, they have position already. This kind of production, this is a candidate of location they want to go. So actually they look at the region and they have, you should be here, you should be here. If it that clear or specific, but if you are equal, so maybe some incentive can attract them more. But in general, they have some idea about this kind of production block. They're gonna put it where. Secondly, I'm sure competition is still there, but I still believe the market is big enough and the supply chain is kind of needs so many locations for production. So by that one, even though we're competing in one way, but we are complementing in other ways. So it's kind of one country cannot have all the production block in the same place. So that's why we need, those kind of, if we go back to trade theory, comparative advantage, competitive advantage, something like that. So at least we still find something better than or worse than in that part here. Yeah. But I agree with you, it's classic question that people talk about. I think I will stop there because SOE, I'm not in that field. Okay. Thank you.
I face very interesting question. Firstly, about the technology transfer in terms of the batteries technologies, unfortunately not yet. That is something that we need to improve. As again, I'm looking at Chinese colleagues, waiting for your support in terms of leading in the transfer of the technology, because right now, the processing of the battery in the value chain of VinFast, Gaussian portion is like a black box. So it goes there and then you have the output. So this is something in the future I think we need to improve on. Secondly, I would combine the two questions by Dr. Li Yao and colleagues from Thailand about AI, about dark factory, and about competition among China and ASEAN. I think nowadays we should not have the assumption that ASEAN, China are competing with each other, because if we look at the trade war context, it is time for China to make a lot of change, because the tariff war by Trump is not about disproportion of export and import. The final intention of Trump is to cut off all China export, by whatever route, ASEAN country or whatever. And so the strategic diversification of China should be to localize more, to embed more inside ASEAN country. And I've been doing my research, and I know that the highest rate, for goods that are destined for the United States, you need to have 45% local content. So that is the target we need to aim for. That means the value created in, you can bring the material, you can bring the technology to ASEAN country, but as long as the value added from ASEAN country more than 45%, we can escape the transshipment problem. And that will lead to a lot of strategic reconfiguration of the supply chain. And I think it's time for China to think of a new master plan on how to integrate deeper with ASEAN country. And I believe that the future of this region is by Northeast Asia, leading the new flying geese, thinking about how the big country like China will remake. You're very good at making master plan, big global initiative and regional plan. So it's very important that China make the new master plan on how you can reconfigure the supply chain, the manufacturing chain here, so that you can enhance the local values in ASEAN country, enhance the technology transfer in ASEAN country, and settle the issue of market access by enhancing the made in ASEAN, made by ASEAN, and that will make the change. I hope that, and otherwise, if we talk about the economic law and the business people, of course, they're always competition. People will always, by chance, they will get the maximum profit. They don't care about making concession, or you have to sacrifice for other country. No, it is the work of the top leader to think of how we can reconfigure the manufacturing line and how we can share the division of labor in a way that benefit and win-win for everyone. That's my humble contribution. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So I think from the moment of this morning up to now, I think we have a very fruitfully discussion. And also you can see the theme that we have now, that green industrialization and critical minerals. And I would like to end up my moderator position, and it was the right time that to provide about the closing remark on the behalf of the head of Center for ASEAN Studies, Chiang Mai University. It's such a great honor to see the cooperation within ASEAN and China. Ministry of Higher Education, Science Technologies of Thailand, NACT China, and also every NACT in ASEAN. And I mentioned about Professor Farhad because a friend of mine, his name exactly the same, just like you. So, but you are more handsome than him. Okay, thank you so much. And you can see the future of ASEAN. Professor Quinn from Myanmar, you can see that this is the future of ASEAN. Don't you think? Then we are now trying to bridge the gap and don't want to be in the trap. And that is a more fruitfully crossing remark without any preparation. And I do think that we should give some of the big applause to our region. Also thankful to the host from NACT China. Thank you so much. And now I would like to make a very important thing that we're gonna move out from this hotel to the Thai food restaurant at 6 p.m. local time, BKK time. So if anyone don't want to get the delicious food called Thai food, please, raise your hand and sign your name that nothing happened to you. Just kidding. So everyone would be at 6 p.m. at that moment, and we're going to move up. And how about I ask everyone to step out to the front and have some photo taken, and we exchange hands together one more time for the 10 countries and plus China. And thank you so much. And now this is the end of the official of the green industrialization and the critical minerals, avoiding a new resource trap in ASEAN-China green supply chain. Thank you so much, everyone.